everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Fiona, and I'm so excited to have author, activist, entrepreneur, and musician, also the founder of the Slants Foundation, Simon Tam, here with us today. How are you doing, Simon?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
So where are you located right now?
I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio.
That's awesome. We're excited to have you here with us today. And for listeners who want to get to know more about you, can you share with us who you are and what you're working on right now?
Yeah, so I oftentimes describe myself as an artist, as an author, but probably more often than not as a troublemaker, because in the words of the late Congressman Lewis, I like to make good trouble. I like to do things that I believe will have a social impact in the world. And so that goes for everything from my career in a band called the Slants, where we did like Asian American dance rock music, to composing things for film and television, and then most recently being a part of a group that started a nonprofit called the Slants Foundation, which really looks to fund and mentor Asian and Asian American artists so that they can make trouble using their own art.
And that's precisely how we met, because in the Slants Foundation, there are so many different types of programs and cohorts that you are curating, and I signed up for one of them called Asian Pacifics, which ties in music, arts, and activism together. First of all, thank you so much for choosing me among 10 other fabulous Asian American musicians who I've learned so much from. And can you tell us a bit more about the Slants Foundation and the Asian Pacifics program?
Sure. So the foundation really likes to work at what I call the intersection of culture and civic engagement. In other words, we want to help artists understand how they can make a real-world impact using creativity, using artistic works, whether it's music, film, dance, or anything else. But beyond that, I wanted to create an organization that kind of filled in the gap that I saw in the world of nonprofits. A lot of them focus primarily on like classical forms of art, like classic music, classic forms of theater and dance, and they were not exactly funding pop music, punk rock, or hip hop. And so I said, like, let's figure out like what we can do to kind of fill in that kind of gap. And then the other part of it was like, I noticed a lot of organizations either focus really, really heavily on the nonprofit, like social impact part, but they didn't really focus on the other parts of a musician's career, or they focus almost only on artistic development. And so when we started thinking about this particular program, I wanted that kind of threefold approach. We want to not only help artists understand how to be better musicians and compose better music, but also how to manage their careers in a way that's sustainable and in a way that grows while they're making a cultural impact in greater society. And that includes, collaborating with nonprofit organizations and that sort of thing. And what you kind of mentioned is it also includes building a community with other artists who may be in your same kind of situation or shoes that you can relate to, that you could turn to for advice or inspiration.
Yeah. This is definitely the first time that I've gone back into social impact. Obviously, I did a lot of volunteer work when I was in high school and college, but never did I imagine that I would be able to share a little bit or contribute a little bit to a social cause that I care about, which is creating safer online communities for Asian American Pacific Islander youth with a song. And that really changed my perspective about why I want to write music and what kind of message I want to share from here on out, things that I could write and sing about. What was so cool about this program was, one, not only meeting other Asian American artists who are focusing on a different social cause, but also listening to the evolution of their music genre. And you're right, it was a very all-encompassing program because every month we would meet and you always had a guest lecturer who would help mentor us if it were songwriting or trademark issues or even production. And I felt, this was something that I always wanted, but I didn't really want to deep dive into music school because that was a very scary thing, being a kid of immigrant parents. And so I felt like that need and want, the wish that I had, as I was starting out, it was just like a beautiful little bundle package. that I finally got, and I had so many supportive people along the way. So I am very, very grateful for this program. But also, this has been the second year the Slants Foundation has hosted this cohort. So how has it been for you? What was it like from inception to seeing it like grow and mature as it keeps growing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always super rewarding. I like to say we're kind of building the plane as we fly it, because there aren't a lot of models out there just exactly like this. So we kind of every year learn a little bit more about how to do it. Even though it's our second year of running this particular program, we've been a nonprofit for about 6.5 years now. And so I think each time we do something new, whether it's developing workshops or launching a music business conference for artists, we just learn a little bit more about how to better serve our artists. And so for this particular year, we did a whole lot more than we did the first time around. We have these monthly meetings. As you mentioned, we bring in coaches and industry professionals. And I think it's been a lot of fun. So far, the feedback from artists as well as mentors has been really positive. And I think we'll continue to kind of tinker with this particular model. I'll probably ask you more offline about like how we can better serve artists. But for me, it's as somebody who struggled a little bit with finding success initially in the music industry, I always wanted to have the kind of resources and mentorship and relationships that we're trying to offer, and just kept thinking like, what did I need at that time as a kid who did not go to Berklee College in Music, or as somebody who wanted to find like sustainable like income while I was building my music career. I was working a career as I was launching the Slants before I was able to finally quit the traditional work structure. Like I was like, what were the things that I struggled with and needed, and how can I make sure that other people don't have to struggle as much? So I think that each time we get to do this and interact with artists like yourself, we learn a little bit more about it. And at the same time, we're also hearing from each of your nonprofits that you work with, and to figure out how we can be better partners and teach artists to work more effectively with the different organizations and causes that they choose as well.
Right. And I think it's such a wonderful program because you have been there before and done that in a very successful way. So let's talk about you being a musician for over 15 years, right?
Yeah.
So please
probably
share.
A little longer than that.
Longer than that. I would say that is an achievement. Can you share with us how you got started and what instrument do you play?
Yeah, so I started playing bass guitar at a really young age, and even when I was in high school, I started joining bands, and I realized that there wasn't a lot of support out there. There wasn't support for my family, and there wasn't a lot of support for artists of a younger age. And so while I was in high school, I started my first record label, and I started signing bands from San Diego and putting on shows, and realizing that, hey, I don't have to wait for success to happen. I don't have to wait for someone else to do this for me. I can learn the ropes. And at the worst case scenario, even if it, is a crash and burn failure, at least I'll learn more about that side of the industry, so that if I do hire people or work with a label or a promoter, I'll at least know their perspective and what to look out for, and figure out what the exact needs are on my end. And so over the years, as I continued on, I eventually started this Asian American band called the Slants, and was able to take all that knowledge and all that experience and apply it very, very in a very focused way. I started realizing that being an artist is really also being an entrepreneur, and thankfully we were able to have a very rewarding career, and I think that was in part because we started adapting to newer technologies like social media, but also just approaching it with that very entrepreneurial mindset. And so I think a lot of what I do now with the Slants Foundation is helping artists like realize that they should bring as much creativity to the business side of their career and the social impact side as they do to their actual creative expression and their music.
100%. I wish more people knew this going in as an independent musician, that you do have to think like an entrepreneur, or you gotta have a marketing strategy, because writing music is maybe 50% of the networking, putting yourself out there, marketing. That's also going to give you a bigger engagement and reach. So that's something that I learned from Asian Pacifics too, is what is your unique value proposition? And that's why I felt it was just a very, very special cohort. So you were in a rock band, and when you started out, did you have the support and blessing of your parents?
No, definitely not. They as immigrants were obviously very concerned about like my economic security. They wanted me to have a traditional college degree. I actually dropped out of college the first time around a few months before graduating to join a punk band, and I moved across the country and kind of risked everything for that career. And so obviously they were a little bit concerned, but what's funny is even though the band started experiencing success, I mean, we were getting flown all around the world. I'd oftentimes perform for crowds of 5,000 to 10,000 people, and I would send them DVDs of these shows and send them newspaper clippings and magazines. They're always like, people pay money for this? When are you gonna get a real job? Questions like that. I'm like, I bought a house. I'm able to take care of myself now. But they were just so stuck in a particular mindset of like what a career looks like. And I would say it probably wasn't until I was over a decade into doing the slants that they realized that maybe there was a bigger impact involved. And that was only because I was featured in the Chinese newspaper. I was on the front page, and then my dad was like, oh, is this actually a legit thing? And
well, you got recognition and validation within your own community, which probably meant the world to your parents, especially they were reading about you in a language that they felt very familiar with too.
Correct. Like the first time I was featured in Time magazine, I was so excited. I called my dad. I was like, hey Dad, I'm on Time magazine. And he's like, so I don't know what this is. And I was like, Dad, like it's like this is important. Like this is, it's to me, it was a marker of success, but I realized that marker didn't mean anything to him if he couldn't see himself in it. It wasn't until it entered his world in a newspaper that he read every single day that he realized, oh, this is a big deal. I could finally fully see it and realize it. And it was only after that happened that, he started talking to his friends and people he knew, and they're like, oh, we all know about Simon's band. And he's like, how come you all know more about my son's life than me? And he's like, okay, this is a big deal, and I should actually be invested in this a little bit more.
The name of your band is very, very important in Asian American history, because as your band was getting bigger and bigger, you hit a roadblock and you went to court with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, so a couple years into the band, one of our lawyers had suggested that we register our band's name as a trademark. It's actually really standard for artists to do because it allows you to secure licensing agreements, protect your merchandise, make sure that someone else isn't just copying your name and selling tickets and trying to like capitalize on your band's fame or success or that sort of thing. And so a very routine thing to do, just like getting a copyright. Well, when we applied, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office said that they didn't like it. In fact, they said that our name was disparaging to persons of Asian descent, or in other words, that we're racist and offensive to Asian people, even though we just spent years touring the country working with over 100 different Asian American organizations and festivals and events. And so it led to a very long and protracted legal battle of us trying to just fight for the right of our name, for us to be able to choose our own identity and say like, hey, we're not offensive to ourselves. In fact, we're reclaiming this outdated slur, we're turning it upside down, flipping it on its head, and trying to inject new meaning and have more of a nuanced discussion of who gets to control identity, and also to really question why the idea of having slanted eyes is considered offensive at all. Like, it shouldn't be, in our opinion.
And you won!
And we won it. It took almost a decade. We went to the Supreme Court of the United States, but yeah, we won unanimously, and it was, I never expected it. I mean, you just don't know where life will take you, but I am so grateful that we had the support of our community and many other folks that allowed us to persist, and if nothing else, to prove to people that when you put perseverance and patience together, and you have, you live by your values, that you can actually really impact the world in a really amazing ways.
What was going through your head when it was a unanimous decision that ruled in your favor?
Honestly, I was just glad the whole thing was over. It took me a couple of days to really process. I mean, this was, at the time, almost a quarter of my life was spent in this legal battle, and I had not even committed a crime. So it was just really surreal to finally have it all over. But I think once it ended, I just thought, I hope that nobody else has to endure this. That, so I was glad that we changed the law and that we could turn things back to let communities, instead of random people and government agencies, decide what's best for us. Because it's kind of degrading and to kind of have to prove that you're not offensive to yourself, and to have somebody else who isn't of Asian identity tell us what was good for our community. And it's like, we should have that agency as a community. And so I'm glad that we were able to inject a little bit more nuance into the law.
And in terms of perseverance, you did that for 10 years. Can you share with us, what was your motivation to keep going?
I think it was twofold. One was like, I realized like how difficult and how bad the whole thing made me feel, and I didn't want anyone else to have to go through that again. And as part of that, I was just kind of thinking like, I could have just given up and no one would blame me. In fact, my attorneys and other people were like, this is really hard, this is really expensive, you can just stop. But I realized that like at the end of my life, if I were to reflect on it and I thought I could have done more, would I be able to live with that? And I realized, no, I want to do everything I can as long as I can, because I don't want to leave that hanging. I just realized that everyone else who had challenged this law had lost. And so I was in a unique position to try and carry it forward just a little bit more. And I thought, well, I ought to do that. The other part of it was that I had really great mentors. I mean, I was doing a lot of volunteer work with different organizations, especially those around bullying, around, advocating for better laws for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And one of my mentors really asked me to think deeply, what justice meant to me. We use this word all the time, justice, but I don't know how often people actually reflect and think about what it means in practice. And I think it was the Dr. Cornel West who said, justice is what love looks like in public. And then when you pair that up with another philosopher, John Rawls, he said that, justice is fairness. It is having laws that we would all agree to no matter who is in charge. That's when I realized that, my battle with civil liberties is really important because we are dealing with something that's profoundly unfair. And if I can make it a little bit more fair, even if it's just that little part of the universe, that little corner of law, we can bend that moral arc of the universe a little bit more towards justice.
Wow, that is really profound, because a lot of us walk through life not thinking that we do have the capability of serving others in a bigger way, and that we do have strength in numbers and we do see unfairness. So what you did for the Asian American Pacific Islander community was huge, as you are continuing to do with the Slants Foundation. And I've been to one of your talks as well, where you wrote your whole experience in a book, but you have this really wonderful talk where you segue in your songs, your life experiences, and also your mission for justice, which I think is amazing, because kids, company, team building, everyone can appreciate what message you are trying to share. Are you still giving talks right now?
I am, at least for a little bit longer. Right now, I'm exploring the idea of moving overseas, but until that happens, and I guess even if I do move, I'd probably come back occasionally for events. I do the talk because my co-founder of the Slants Foundation, Joe Jiang, who's also my co-presenter in this particular talk, we use this as a big fundraiser to raise the money needed to run programs like Pacifics. So whenever we give our talk, we use it to get resources to fund, artists like yourself. It's our way of giving back to the community And my hope is to not have to talk about myself anymore, but that just happens. It's part of the talk. But if it allows us to raise money so that we can help tell other people's stories and that they could tell their own, then for me, that would be a dream come true. And so as long as it inspires other people to do work and it inspires people to give and support the nonprofit so that we can continue to support other artists and other really incredible artistic projects, then yeah, I'm all in. But I oftentimes say I don't want to I wish I didn't have to tell that particular story. But at least we could try and have fun while we're doing it, which is why we started folding in music and doing some other things with it.
It's been so amazing to get to know you through this program, and I do hope that we continue to keep in touch. If there's any way that I can contribute back to Asia Pacifics, I'm there. What is your hope in the future for the Slants Foundation and for the Asian Pacifics program?
I think for me, I've been with the organization since the very, very beginning. And I don't know if that's something I'll do for the rest of my life. I mean, I think I'll always support it and be involved in some capacity, but I would love to have it at a point where there's new blood, new ideas, and other folks to take that helm and allow their vision to help shape it. I would love for the foundation to, as you mentioned, for some of our alum artists that we've worked with to decide, you know what, I want to take that leap and help shape things. So for me, the dream come true is having the organization be able to thrive and to have artists really growing and doing all the great work where they don't necessarily need me. I'm always happy to support and be there on the sidelines, of course. But I think getting it to a point where we can have new champions and new folks would be probably my greatest wish at this moment.
Thank you again for your time and insight today. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you. And where can people, if they wanted to be involved, find you or the Slants Foundation?
If you go to theslants.org, you'll find all about the organization, about all of our programs. We're actually going to be rolling out an application for Asian Pacific's 2025 soon. So if people are interested in being a part of this, whether as a mentor, as a volunteer, or as somebody who, as an artist getting funded and mentored, then they should go to the website and find out more.
I highly recommend it, and I'll definitely be letting my other musician friends know about it. Thank you again for your time today, and hope to catch up with you soon. Thanks, Simon.
So much.